Now let's begin. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune as Tom Johnston sutured a laceration on a construction worker's forearm. 15 years in emergency medicine had taught him to find rhythm in chaos. The controlled urgency, the split-second decisions, the satisfaction of putting broken things back together. He'd started as a trauma surgeon in Chicago before transferring to this smaller hospital in suburban Pennsylvania, seeking a quieter life for his daughter after his wife Patricia died from ovarian cancer 3 years ago. "All set, Mr. Briggs," Tom said, snipping the final thread. "Keep it dry for 48 hours. Your regular doctor can remove the stitches in 2 weeks." His phone buzzed. A text from Cassie, staying late at Melody's to study. Home by 10 Red Heart. Tom smiled. His daughter was 17, junior year at Riverside High, honor roll student with a gift for poetry. They'd grown closer after Patricia's death, learning to navigate grief together. Movie nights every Friday, their tradition. Cassie was responsible, level-headed. He trusted her. Dr. Johnston, incoming ambulance. ETA 4 minutes. MVA, teenage female, possible head trauma. Lee Hall, the charge nurse, appeared in the doorway. 20-year veteran, sharp as a scalpel, the kind of nurse who caught details others missed. Tom nodded, already moving toward the trauma bay. Motor vehicle accident. He mentally ran through protocols as he pulled on fresh gloves, checked the equipment. The automatic doors burst open, paramedics wheeling in a gurney. 17-year-old female, unrestrained passenger, hit a tree at approximately 40 miles per hour. GCS 14, complaining of head and back pain. Tom's world stopped. The girl on the gurney was Cassie. His training kicked in even as his heart seized. He moved to her side, professional instinct overriding the father's terror. "Cassie, Cassie, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. "Dad." Her voice was small, confused. Blood matted her blonde hair. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. You're going to be fine." His hands moved automatically, checking pupils, assessing injuries. Lee was already beside him, cutting away Cassie's jacket. "What happened, honey? Who was driving?" He said. "He was just giving me a ride." Her words slurred slightly. "Possible concussion." "Who?" Tom looked up at the paramedics. "Where's the driver?" "Middle-aged male, minor injuries, already brought in. He's in Bay 3 claiming he was being a good Samaritan. Saw her walking alone." Something cold settled in Tom's gut. Cassie hadn't been at Melody's house. She'd lied to him. A man he didn't know had been driving his daughter, and now she was bleeding on a trauma table. "Dad, please don't be mad." Cassie's hand reached for his. "I'm not mad. We'll talk later. Right now, let me take care of you." He forced calm into his voice while his mind raced. The man in Bay 3. He needed to see him, needed answers. But first, Cassie. He continued his examination, noting abrasions on her face and arms, a possible broken rib. "We need a CT scan of her head and chest." "Lee, can you?" "Doctor, we need to remove her shirt to assess the thoracic injuries." Lee's voice was carefully neutral, but something in her tone made Tom look up. She held scissors poised over Cassie's clothing. "Go ahead." Lee cut the fabric away. Tom saw the bruises on Cassie's arms first, finger-shaped marks, days old, yellowing. His jaw tightened. Then Lee carefully turned Cassie onto her side to check her back, and Tom's entire world shattered. His daughter's back was a canvas of horror. Thin, parallel scars crisscrossed her skin, some fresh, some weeks old. Burn marks dotted her shoulder blades. And across her lower back, still red and healing, were letters carved into her flesh. Words. He couldn't process what they said because his vision was tunneling, rage and terror flooding his system. Lee's hand gripped his arm. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Dr. Johnston, we need to call the police. Now." Tom couldn't move, couldn't breathe. This was his daughter. His little girl who used to climb into his lap with picture books, who'd cried on his shoulder when her mother died, who was supposed to be safe. Someone had done this to her. Someone had hurt her, systematically, repeatedly, and he hadn't known, hadn't seen, hadn't protected her. "Tom," Lee's voice was sharper now. "I'll call Detective Reyes. But you need to step back. You can't treat her. Not for this. Let Dr. English take over." Jasper English, Tom's colleague and friend, appeared as if summoned. "Tom, I've got her. Go. Clear your head. I'll take excellent care of her." Tom stumbled back, his hands shaking. Cassie's eyes were closed now, whether from pain medication or exhaustion, he didn't know. Lee was already on the phone with the police. Other staff members had appeared, their faces professionally neutral, but their eyes revealing shock. "The man in Bay 3, Tom said, his voice coming from somewhere far away. "The driver. Tom, the police will handle it." Jasper was gentle but firm. But Tom was already moving. He walked through the emergency department like a man underwater, everything muted and distant. Bay 3's curtain was partially open. Inside, a man sat on the examination table, holding an ice pack to his forehead. Early 40s, thinning brown hair, expensive leather jacket, wedding ring. Neville Lynch, according to the chart hanging outside. Tom stepped inside. "Are you the doctor?" Neville Lynch smiled, friendly, disarming. "Just a few bumps and bruises. Lucky, really. The tree came out of nowhere. I'm just glad I could help that poor girl. She was walking alone in the dark, can you imagine? What kind of father lets his teenage daughter?" Tom's fist connected with Neville's jaw before he'd consciously decided to move. The impact was savage, surgical precision transformed into violence. Neville crashed backward off the table, blood exploding from his split lip. "You son of a—" Tom lunged forward, but strong arms wrapped around him from behind. Security guards. Lee had called them. Smart woman. "Dr. Johnston, stand down." The guard's voice was authoritative. Neville pulled himself up, dabbing at his bleeding mouth, but his eyes were cold now, calculating. The friendly mask had dropped. "Did you see that? He assaulted me. I want to press charges. I was trying to help his daughter, and this is how. Shut your mouth." Tom's voice was deadly quiet. The rage that had exploded into violence now crystallized into something harder, colder. "That's my daughter, and I saw what you did to her." Something flickered in Neville's eyes. Fear? No. Recognition. He knew Tom had seen Cassie's back, and there was no surprise in his expression, no denial forming. Just a quick calculation, a shift in strategy. "I don't know what you're talking about. I found her by the side of the road. If she has injuries, they're not for me. Maybe you should ask yourself why your daughter was alone at night, where she'd been." Two police officers entered the bay. Tom recognized Tobias Reyes, a detective he'd worked with on assault cases before. Tall, Hispanic, mid-40s, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Dr. Johnston, I need you to step outside." Reyes' voice was calm. "Now." The security guards released Tom, but stayed close. He backed toward the door, never taking his eyes off Neville Lynch. The man sat there, bleeding, but something like a smile played at the corners of his mouth. He thought he'd win this. Thought he'd walk away. He had no idea what was coming. The interrogation room was small and sterile. Tom sat across from Detective Reyes, his hands wrapped around a paper cup of terrible coffee. 2 hours had passed since Cassie's admission. His knuckles were bruised from hitting Neville Lynch, and he didn't regret it for a second. "Tell me everything you know about Neville Lynch," Reyes said, pen poised over his notepad. "Nothing. I'd never seen him before tonight." "And Cassie never mentioned him?" "No." Tom's jaw clenched. "She told me she was studying at her friend Melody's house." "I believed her." Reyes was quiet for a moment. "Dr. Johnston, I've seen the photographs of your daughter's injuries. This is the worst case of child abuse I've encountered in 15 years. We're talking systematic torture over an extended period. Weeks, maybe months. You really had no idea?" The question was a knife between Tom's ribs. "She wore long sleeves. Always. Even in summer. I thought. God, he'd been so blind. I thought she was self-conscious about her body. Teenage girl stuff. She said the house was cold. I believed her. Cassie's been interviewed by a specialist. She's not talking much, but she confirmed Neville Lynch has been involved with her for approximately 4 months. For months." Tom's hands tightened around the cup, crushing it. Coffee spilled across the table. He didn't move to clean it. "How did they meet?" His voice was barely human. Reyes pulled out a folder. "According to what we've pieced together, he approached her outside her school. Said he was a photographer, talent scout. Told her she was beautiful, could be a model. Classic predator technique. He gained her trust gradually. Gifts, attention, made her feel special. Then the relationship shifted. He raped her." Tom couldn't say it as a question. "Multiple times. And based on the injuries, he did much worse." "Dr. Johnston," the words carved into her back. Reyes paused, clearly uncomfortable. "They say property of NL. This wasn't impulsive. This was systematic grooming and torture. Property. Someone had branded his daughter like livestock. Where is he now?" Tom asked. In custody. But Tom, I need to be honest with you. Neville Lynch is a wealthy man. He owns a consulting firm, has political connections, a very expensive lawyer already on the way. His wife is Marjorie Lynch. You know, the Lynch Foundation? Major donors to the Children's Hospital, ironically. They have influence. He tortured my daughter. We have the medical evidence. We have Cassie's testimony, though she's traumatized and might not be a reliable witness in court. His lawyers will argue that. We're searching his car, his home, his electronics. But I've seen cases like this before. Men like Lynch, they're careful. They know how to avoid leaving evidence. And they can afford to make problems disappear. Tom stood, the chair scraping back. Then I'll make sure he doesn't. Tom. Reyes rose as well, his voice hardening. I understand what you're feeling. But you need to let the system work. If you do anything, to compromise this investigation, Lynch walks. Do you understand me? You assaulted him. He could press charges, could use that to paint you as violent, unstable. His lawyers will argue you're trying to frame him because you're an abusive father looking for a scapegoat. That's insane. That's how expensive lawyers work. Reyes moved around the table, placing a hand on Tom's shoulder. Go be with your daughter. Let me do my job. We'll get him. But as Tom left the police station and drove back to the hospital in the pre-dawn darkness, Reyes's words echoed in his mind. We'll get him. Not a promise. A hope. And hope wasn't enough. Not for this. Not for what had been done to Cassie. He'd spent 15 years putting people back together in the ER. He knew human anatomy intimately, every system, every vulnerability, every way the body could break. He knew pharmacology, toxicology, psychology. He knew how to save lives. He could use that knowledge for something else. Cassie was asleep in a private room when Tom returned. The morning sun streamed through the window, cruelly beautiful. She looked so small in the hospital bed, so young. IVs ran from both arms. Bandages covered her back. Her face was bruised, healing from the accident that had revealed the nightmare beneath. Tom pulled a chair close and took her hand. She stirred, eyes opening. Dad, I'm here, sweetheart. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but he said if I told anyone, he'd hurt you. He showed me pictures of our house, of you leaving work. He knew everything. I was so scared. Tom's heart broke and reformed, harder, colder. None of this is your fault. Do you understand me? Nothing that happened is your fault. He made me. She couldn't finish the sentence, her body shaking with sobs. Tom held her carefully, mindful of her injuries. You don't have to talk about it now. Or ever, if you don't want to. What matters is you're safe now. But he's not in jail forever, is he? He told me he has friends. That he's protected. That even if I talked, nothing would happen to him. He's wrong. Dad, you don't know him. He's smart. He's careful. He showed me articles about other men like him who got away with it. He said the system protects people like him. Tom pulled back to look at his daughter's face. Cassie, I need you to trust me. He's not going to hurt you or anyone else ever again. I promise you that. How can you promise that? Because I'm your father, and I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe. A nurse entered to check Cassie's vitals, and Tom stepped into the hallway. His phone buzzed. A text from Jasper. Call me. Important. Tom dialed. Tom, are you sitting down? Jasper's voice was tense. Just tell me. I ran Neville Lynch's name through some databases. Medical records, hospital admissions. He's been to the ER 3 times in the past 2 years. Twice 4 accidents involving teenage girls. 117, 116. Both times, the girls claimed they were in relationships with him. Both times, their parents tried to press charges, and both times, the cases were dropped. Witnesses recanted. Evidence disappeared. The families were paid off or threatened. Tom's grip on the phone tightened. He's done this before. More than twice, I'm betting. Those are just the ones I found in our system. Tom, one of those families, the Parkses, they still live in town. The father tried to kill Lynch after the case was dropped. He's currently in prison for attempted murder. Give me their information. Tom, what are you planning? Research. I want to know everything about Neville Lynch. Everything he's done, everyone he's hurt, every way he operates. If the legal system is going to fail, I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Jasper was quiet for a moment. I'll send you what I have. But Tom, be careful. Men like Lynch, they don't fight fair. And if you're caught doing something illegal, I know the risks. After hanging up, Tom stood in the empty hallway, his mind already working through possibilities. He'd been a surgeon before becoming an ER doctor. Surgery required planning, precision, understanding systems, and how to manipulate them. He'd taken an oath to do no harm. But that oath was to protect life. And sometimes, protecting life meant removing cancer. Neville Lynch was cancer, and Tom was going to cut him out. His phone buzzed again. An email from Jasper with attachments. Tom opened the first file. Kendra Parks, mother of victim Ashley Parks, 16 at the time of her assault. The family lived in Riverside Estates, 15 minutes away. Tom pulled up a satellite view of their home. Modern colonial, well-maintained lawn. The husband, Bobby Parks, was serving 5 to 7 years for assault with a deadly weapon. Tom made a decision. He texted Cassie's hospital room, going to run some errands. Back in a few hours. I love you. Then he drove to Riverside Estates. The address led him to a house with a for sale sign in the yard. Tom parked and approached the front door. A woman answered on the second knock. Late 30s, dark hair pulled back, exhausted eyes that suggested she hadn't slept well in years. Kendra Parks. Mrs. Parks? My name is Tom Johnston. I'm a doctor at Riverside General, and I need to talk to you about Neville Lynch. Her expression shifted from confusion to recognition to fury in the span of a heartbeat. Did he hurt another girl? My daughter. Kendra's face crumpled. She opened the door wider. Come in. The house was mostly packed, boxes stacked in the corners. Kendra led Tom to a kitchen still functional, poured 2 glasses of water, and sat at the table. I'm selling, she said without preamble. Can't afford it anyway, not with Bobby in prison. And too many memories. Ashley won't even come into this house anymore. She's living with my sister in Ohio. Tell me what happened. Ashley was 16. Beautiful, smart, captain of the debate team. Lynch approached her at a bookstore, said he was a literary agent. She wanted to be a writer. He flattered her, gave her attention, made her feel like she mattered. By the time Bobby and I realized something was wrong, it had been going on for 3 months. What did he do to her? Kendra's hands shook around her water glass. Everything. Raped her, beat her, burned her with cigarettes, put out cigarettes on her skin and made her thank him. He had a room in his lake house, soundproofed. That's where he took them. Ashley said she met 2 other girls there once. She doesn't know their names. Lynch kept them separate, but she saw them. Young, terrified. He's been doing this for years, Dr. Johnston, and he always gets away with it. Not this time. Kendra laughed bitterly. That's what Bobby said. He tried to kill Lynch. Shot at him outside his office building. Missed. Bobby's a contractor, not a killer. And now he's in prison while Lynch walks free. You want my advice? Take your daughter and run. Move to another state. Change your names. Because if you stay and fight, you'll lose. The system is rigged for men like him. I'm not running. Then you're a fool. Lynch has judges in his pocket. Police officers. Politicians. You think you can win against that? Tom leaned forward. Mrs. Parks, I need information. Everything you know about Lynch. His patterns, his properties, his associates. I need to understand how he operates. Kendra studied him for a long moment. You're going to do something illegal. I'm going to do whatever is necessary. She stood and retrieved a file box from the top of a stack. Bobby kept everything. Photos, documents, transcripts from the trial that never happened. Police reports that went nowhere. He was obsessed with building a case, with finding something that would stick. It drove him crazy when it all fell apart. Tom opened the box. Inside were hundreds of pages, printouts, photographs, handwritten notes. Bobby Parks had been thorough. The lake house, Kendra said. That's where he takes them. It's in his wife's name, so the police couldn't get a warrant. Isolated property, no neighbors for miles. That's where you'll find evidence. But getting in there won't be easy. Tom pulled out a photograph of a modern structure on the edge of a lake, surrounded by forest. Address. Kendra wrote it down. Dr. Johnston, whatever you're planning, be smarter than Bobby. He let rage control him. That's why he failed. I won't fail. As Tom drove away from the Parks house, his mind was already assembling a plan. He couldn't go to the lake house yet. It would be too obvious, too suspicious. He needed to be strategic. Lynch was in police custody for now, but based on Reyes's warnings, he'd be out on bail within days. Tom needed to use that time to gather intelligence, to understand his enemy completely. He made a stop at a 24-hour pharmacy, purchasing a burner phone with cash. Then he drove to a coffee shop with public Wi-Fi, and created an anonymous email account. Using Bobby Parks's files, he began reaching out to the other victims' families, the ones Jasper had identified. He needed to know how many there were, needed to understand the full scope of Lynch's operation. By the time he returned to the hospital that evening, he had 3 responses. 3 more families destroyed by Neville Lynch. 3 more daughters scarred forever. And every single case had been dropped, dismissed, or settled out of court with non-disclosure agreements. But Tom also had something else. A pattern. Lynch didn't work alone. He had an associate, someone who helped him identify and groom victims. References to a partner appeared in multiple testimonies, though no name was ever given. Someone else was involved, and that person was still free. Tom sat in Cassie's room as she slept, his laptop open, diving deeper into Lynch's world. The consulting firm Lynch owned was a front. It did real business, enough to appear legitimate, but its profits didn't match its expenses. Money was flowing somewhere else. Tom traced shell companies, offshore accounts, real estate holdings registered under different names. And then he found it. A membership list, partially encrypted, from a server breach of a now-defunct website. Names, dates, payment records. It was a client list. Men paying for premium experiences at Lynch's lake house. Wealthy men, powerful men. Senators, CEOs, celebrities. They were all part of this. Lynch wasn't just a predator. He was running a service, providing access to underage girls for other monsters. Tom's hands trembled as he downloaded every file, every piece of evidence. This was bigger than he'd imagined, and more dangerous. These men would protect Lynch to protect themselves. They had infinite resources, infinite reach. But they weren't doctors. They didn't understand anatomy, physiology, the human body's vulnerabilities. They didn't have access to hospital systems, medications, records. Tom did. He closed the laptop and looked at his daughter. She was talking in her sleep, words too quiet to make out, but her face was twisted in distress. Nightmares. She'd have them for years. Maybe forever. Because Neville Lynch had thought she was his property. Tom made a vow in that moment. Not just to make Lynch pay, but to dismantle everything he'd built. Every client, every associate, every piece of his network. They'd all face justice. Maybe not the legal kind, but justice nonetheless. 3 days later, Neville Lynch made bail. $2 million, posted by his wife Marjorie. He walked out of the detention center wearing an expensive suit, his lawyer at his side, and gave a statement to the gathered press about his innocence, about being a victim of a misunderstanding, about planning to sue for false imprisonment. Tom watched the news coverage from his living room. Cassie was upstairs resting. She'd been discharged from the hospital the day before, but she barely spoke, barely ate. She flinched at sudden sounds, refused to be alone. The physical injuries would heal. The psychological ones might never. His phone rang. Detective Reyes. I'm sorry, Tom. I did everything I could. But his lawyer argued flight risk was minimal. He has deep community ties. His wife posted bail. The judge allowed it with the condition he surrenders his passport and wears a monitoring ankle bracelet. So he's free. For now. The trial is set for 6 months from now. We're building the case, but his legal team is already filing motions to suppress evidence, to question Cassie's testimony. It's going to be a fight. 6 months. I know it's not what you want to hear, but Tom, stay away from him. If you violate the restraining order, if you do anything that could be construed as harassment or witness intimidation, it damages our case. Please, let me handle this. Tom hung up and stared at the television. Lynch was getting into a black Mercedes, his wife beside him. The camera caught his face for a moment. He was smiling. Upstairs, Cassie screamed. Tom bolted from the couch, taking the stairs 3 at a time. He burst into her room. She was in bed, eyes wide with terror, staring at her phone. What is it? Wordlessly, she handed him the device. A text message from an unknown number. Did you miss me? I told you nothing would happen. You should have kept quiet. Now your father will suffer too. Below the message was a photograph. Tom, leaving the hospital 2 days ago, unaware he was being watched. He knows where we live, Cassie whispered. He said he'd come back, that I belonged to him. Tom pulled his daughter into his arms, feeling her shake. The terror in her voice ignited something primal in him. This wasn't about justice anymore. This was about survival. Lynch wasn't going to stop. He'd been emboldened by his release, by the knowledge that his money and connections had protected him again. Pack a bag, Tom said quietly. We're leaving. What? You're going to stay with your Aunt Louise in Boston for a while. You'll be safe there. I don't want to run away. You're not running. You're being smart. And I'm going to finish this. Cassie pulled back, studying her father's face. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. That night, Tom drove Cassie to his sister's house in Boston. Louise Wilson was a defense attorney, fierce and protective. She hugged Cassie tight when they arrived, shooting Tom a look that said they'd talk later. Keep her safe, Tom said. Don't let her go anywhere alone. Don't trust anyone. What are you planning? Louise asked. The less you know, the better. The drive back to Pennsylvania took 4 hours. Tom used the time to finalize his plan. He'd spent the past 3 days learning everything about Neville Lynch. His routines, his properties, his associates. The man was arrogant, confident in his invincibility. That was his weakness. Tom stopped at a storage facility on the outskirts of town. Inside the unit he'd rented under a false name, he'd assembled supplies. Medical equipment borrowed from the hospital, syringes, for bags, various medications. Bobby Parks's files. A laptop with encrypted files. And other items. Things he'd purchased with cash from various sources. Things a doctor should never have. He looked at the collection and felt no hesitation, no moral doubt. These tools would be used to remove a cancer from the world. That was medical. That was necessary. His phone buzzed. An email to his anonymous account. One of the victims' mothers had responded with additional information. Laura Chun, whose daughter Janie had been Lynch's victim 2 years ago. She'd hired a private investigator before the case fell apart, and the PI had discovered something interesting. Lynch had a partner, Alexander Birch, a high school guidance counselor. Birch identified vulnerable girls and steered them toward Lynch. He was the recruiter. Tom's jaw clenched. A guidance counselor. Someone in a position of trust, someone whose job was to protect children. And he was feeding them to a predator. 2 targets now. But first, he needed more information. He needed to understand the full scope of their operation before he could dismantle it. Tom drove to the address Laura Chun had provided for Alexander Birch. A modest apartment building in a middle-class neighborhood. He parked down the street and waited. At 7 p.m., a man emerged. Mid-30s, unremarkable features, forgettable. The perfect predator, invisible. Tom followed him. Birch drove to a coffee shop, where he met with a teenage girl. Tom watched through the window as Birch smiled, laughed, made the girl comfortable. She was young, maybe 15 or 16. Vulnerable body language, hunched shoulders, avoiding eye contact. Birch leaned in, said something that made her smile hesitantly. Tom took photographs. Then he entered the coffee shop and sat at a nearby table, close enough to hear their conversation. Just think you have so much potential, Birch was saying. You shouldn't let anyone make you feel worthless. You're special. The girl ducked her head. My parents don't understand. Of course they don't. But I do. And I know someone who could help you. He's a life coach, very successful. He helps young people find their confidence. I could introduce you. Tom's hands clenched around his coffee cup. Birch was grooming her right now, setting her up for Lynch. How many others had he done this to? He waited until the girl left, then followed Birch back to his apartment. Tom sat in his car for hours, watching the windows, the comings and goings. At midnight, Birch finally went to bed, lights clicking off one by one. Tom put on gloves, grabbed a small bag from his trunk, and approached the building. The security was minimal. A simple lock he picked easily, skills learned from years of working with police and learning from crime victims. He climbed the stairs to Birch's third-floor apartment and picked that lock too. Inside, the apartment was neat, organized. Tom moved silently through it, searching. In the bedroom, he found a laptop. In the closet, a locked box. He broke the lock with a screwdriver. Inside the box, photographs. Dozens of them. Young girls, some Tom recognized from the victim files. Others he didn't. All of them before they met Lynch. Innocent, smiling, unaware of what was coming. And notes. Handwritten observations about each girl. Their vulnerabilities, their weaknesses, their family situations. A hunting catalog. Tom photographed everything with his phone. Evidence. But not for the police. For his purposes. He left the apartment as silently as he'd entered, taking the box and laptop with him. Birch would notice they were gone, but by then, it would be too late. Back at his storage unit, Tom uploaded the laptop's contents. The files were encrypted, but Tom had connections, a tech specialist he'd worked with on identity theft cases. For $5,000 in cash, the specialist agreed to crack the encryption, no questions asked. What Tom found inside made his blood run cold. Video files, recordings from the lake house, Lynch's premium experiences captured on camera, sold to clients who couldn't attend in person. Dozens of videos, dozens of victims, and a client list. Over 200 names. Prosecutors, police officers, businessmen, teachers. A network of predators, all protected by each other, all complicit. Tom sat in the dark storage unit, surrounded by evidence of systematic evil, and understood the scope of what he was facing. Taking down Lynch wasn't enough. The entire network had to fall. But the network was too large, too powerful to attack directly. He needed to be strategic. Start with the head, Lynch, and work his way down. Use fear and paranoia to make the network turn on itself. He composed an anonymous email to every name on the client list. I know what you did. I have the videos. You have 72 hours to turn yourselves into the police, or the evidence goes public. He didn't send it yet. That was the nuclear option, and it would only work once. First, he needed to handle Lynch and Birch personally. Make them pay in a way that legal justice never could. Tom checked his watch. 3 a.m. He drove to the lake house, the isolated property where Lynch had tortured his victims. The place was dark, surrounded by forest. Tom parked a mile away and hiked in, carrying his bag of supplies. The house was modern, glass and steel, beautiful in the moonlight. Abomination wrapped in elegance. Tom circled it, noting security cameras, motion sensors. Lynch's bail conditions required him to stay at his primary residence, which meant the lake house should be empty. Tom disabled the external cameras with a scrambler device, then picked the back door lock. Inside, the house was silent. He moved through rooms furnished with expensive leather and chrome, until he found what he was looking for, a door leading to the basement. The soundproofed room Kendra Parks had mentioned. Tom descended the stairs, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The room at the bottom made him want to vomit. Chains bolted to walls. A table with restraints. Medical equipment, not for healing. A camera on a tripod. And photographs on the walls. Trophies. Girls frozen in moments of agony and terror. Cassie's photograph was there. Recent. Her face contorted in pain. Tom forced himself to breathe, to think clearly. He photographed everything, documenting every detail. Then he collected evidence, fibers, DNA samples, anything that would prove Lynch used this room. He also planted something. A small device, custom-made by his tech specialist. A listening device and GPS tracker that would activate when anyone entered the room. Before leaving, Tom took one of the chains from the wall and the camera. These items would have their uses later. He was back in his car before dawn, driving toward home. His phone buzzed. A text from Louise. Cassie is safe. But Tom, she told me what you're planning. Don't do this. There are legal ways to handle this. Tom didn't respond. There were no legal ways. The system had already failed. It failed Ashley Parks. It failed Janie Chun. It failed all the girls whose photographs lined that basement room. It wouldn't fail Cassie. He spent the next 2 days preparing. Acquired additional supplies. Practiced techniques. Consulted medical texts on pain management. Not to alleviate pain, but to enhance it, to prolong it. He studied toxicology, dosages, nerve responses. He became an expert in suffering. On the third day, he received an alert from the device he'd planted. Someone had entered the lake house basement. Tom checked the GPS. Neville Lynch's ankle monitor showed he was at his primary residence. But someone was at the lake house. Probably Birch, or one of the other associates, retrieving something. Tom drove to the lake house, arriving just as a car was leaving. He followed at a distance. The car led him to an industrial park, to a warehouse at the edge of the property. The car pulled inside, and the door closed behind it. Tom parked and surveilled the building. It took 2 hours before he saw movement, multiple people inside, at least 3 based on the shadows. A meeting. The network was gathering, probably discussing damage control after Lynch's arrest. This was better than Tom had hoped. Multiple targets in one location. He returned that night with supplies. The warehouse had minimal security. He broke in through a side window and planted listening devices throughout the space. Then he waited. Over the next week, he learned everything. The network called themselves The Circle. 40 core members, with hundreds of affiliate clients. They operated in 12 states, with lake houses and properties like Lynch's in each location. Birch was a recruiter, But there were others. Teachers, coaches, youth counselors, people in positions of trust. And they were planning to eliminate the problem. Not by legal means. By making Cassie disappear. Tom heard them discuss it on the recordings. How to make it look like a runaway situation. How to discredit her testimony permanently. They were planning to kill his daughter. Tom listened to the recordings 3 times, his fury transforming into something colder, more focused. He'd been planning to make Lynch suffer, to exact revenge. But this required a different approach. More permanent. More comprehensive. He couldn't take down 40 people alone. But he didn't have to. He just needed to make the network destroy itself. Tom sent the anonymous email to the client list, but with a modification. He included specific details about each person, things only they would know, activities they'd participated in, amounts they'd paid. Proof he had comprehensive evidence. And he gave them a new deadline. Turn yourselves in within 48 hours, or I will release one person's files publicly every day until you do. Then he waited. The panic was immediate. His listening devices in the warehouse captured frantic meetings, accusations, paranoia. The circle members turned on each other, each suspecting the others of being the leak. Some wanted to go to the police and cut deals. Others wanted to find the source and eliminate it. Lynch called an emergency meeting at the warehouse. Tom watched from a distance as cars arrived. 19 men, many Tom recognized from news reports and public life. They gathered inside, their voices carrying through the listening devices. We need to find who's doing this. Lynch's voice, angry and desperate. Someone is targeting us specifically. They have videos, records, names. It's that doctor. Birch's voice. Johnston. It has to be. He's the only one with motivation and access. Then we handle him. Tonight. Before he can release anything. Tom smiled in the darkness. They were predictable. Cornered animals lashing out. He'd anticipated this. He made an anonymous call to Detective Reyes, giving him the warehouse address and the exact time the meeting would end. Then he made calls to 3 investigative journalists, each specializing in corruption and abuse cases, providing them with copies of the client list and selected video files, insurance policies. And finally, he drove to Neville Lynch's primary residence. The house was in a gated community, but Tom had a doctor's ID and a story about an emergency. The guard waved him through. He parked down the street from Lynch's mansion and waited. At 11 p.m., Lynch returned from the warehouse meeting. Tom watched him enter the house, lights turning on in the foyer, then the living room. Marjorie Lynch was visible through the window, waiting for her husband. She didn't know what he was. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Tom gave it an hour, then approached the back of the property. He'd studied the layout from real estate listings. Knew which room was Lynch's study, which door led to the kitchen, where the security cameras were positioned. He disabled the alarm system, a relatively simple model, no match for someone who'd consulted with security experts on patient safety. He entered through the kitchen door, moving silently through the dark house. Lynch was in his study, alone, hunched over his computer, probably trying to identify who was leaking information or contacting lawyers or warning other circle members. He didn't hear Tom enter until it was too late. Tom pressed a cloth soaked in chloroform over Lynch's mouth and nose. Lynch struggled, but Tom had the advantage of surprise and leverage. Within seconds, Lynch went limp. Tom dragged him to the garage, loaded him into the trunk of Lynch's own Mercedes, and drove away from the mansion. No one saw. No one stopped him. He took Lynch to the lake house. Fitting that this would end where Lynch had tortured so many others. Lynch woke to darkness and pain. His head throbbed. His hands were bound above him, feet barely touching the floor. Metal clinked. Chains. The same chains he'd used on his victims. A light clicked on, blindingly bright. Lynch squinted, trying to see. A figure stood in front of him. Tom Johnston. Good morning, Tom said pleasantly, as if greeting a patient in the ER. Or evening. You were unconscious for several hours. Lynch tested the chains. They held firm. You're insane. When the police find out. The police are currently raiding the warehouse where you and your friends meet. Acting on an anonymous tip. I imagine they're finding quite a lot of interesting evidence. By now, Detective Reyes has probably connected your circle to multiple unsolved disappearances and assault cases. Lynch's eyes widened. You called the police? Not just them. 3 major news outlets also have your client list and video files. By tomorrow morning, this will be national news. Your network is finished. You can't prove anything. My lawyers. Your lawyers can't help you now. Nobody can. Tom stepped closer. You know what I do for a living, Neville? I'm a doctor. I understand human anatomy better than almost anyone. Every nerve, every pain receptor, every way the body can hurt. I've spent 15 years learning how to save lives. But that same knowledge can be used differently. Lynch's bravado cracked. What do you want? Money? I can pay you. Whatever you want. What I want is for you to understand. To feel what you made those girls feel. Tom held up a syringe. This is a cocktail of my own design. Nothing immediately fatal, but extremely educational. It amplifies pain signals. Makes even the smallest discomfort excruciating. You can't do this. You're a doctor. I'm a father first. Tom injected the drug into Lynch's arm. This will take about 10 minutes to reach full effect. While we wait, let me tell you what's going to happen. That device around your ankle, the GPS monitor, it's going to show you've been here at the lake house for the past 6 hours, violating your bail conditions. The police will revoke your bail. But that's the least of your problems. Lynch's breathing quickened. You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk your career, your freedom. For my daughter? I'd risk everything. Tom pulled up a chair, sat down casually. Here's what else is happening tonight. Alexander Birch is being arrested as we speak. I provided the police with his laptop and the box of photographs from his apartment. He'll turn on you to reduce his sentence. They always do. And tomorrow, when the news breaks about the circle, every member will be scrambling to cut deals to testify against the others. Your entire network will collapse. The drug was taking effect. Lynch gasped as pain began radiating through his system. Normal sensations, the chain's pressure on his wrists, the air moving across his skin, became agonizing. Please. Lynch gasped. Stop. I'll confess. I'll tell the police everything. Oh, you will. Eventually. But first, you're going to experience every type of pain you inflicted on those girls. Not as severe. I'm not a monster. But enough that you'll understand. Tom spent the next 3 hours methodically demonstrating the education he'd promised. He didn't use knives or fire. Didn't break bones or draw blood. Instead, he used pressure points, nerve clusters, precise touches that the drug amplified into overwhelming agony. Medical torture. Exact. Controlled. Lynch screamed until his voice broke. Begged. Cried. Offered everything he had. Tom was unmoved. He thought of Cassie. Of Ashley Parks. Of Janie Chun. Of all the photographs in that basement room. Lynch had made them scream too. Had ignored their pleas. Now he understood. At 3 a.m., Tom stopped. Lynch hung limp in the chains, conscious but broken. Tom injected him with a sedative, then cleaned the room meticulously. He left Lynch chained up. The police would find him when they came to investigate the bail violation. Before leaving, Tom leaned close. You're going to prison, Neville. And when you get there, the other inmates are going to know exactly what you did. Child predators don't last long in prison. Even if you survive, you'll spend every day looking over your shoulder, waiting. Just like those girls did. Seems fair, doesn't it? Tom drove back to his storage unit, disposed of all evidence, and returned home. He showered, changed clothes, and sat in his living room as dawn broke. His phone buzzed constantly. News alerts. The story was breaking. Massive child exploitation ring uncovered. Dozens arrested. Prominent businessman Neville Lynch named in abuse scandal. Senator resigns amid allegations of child abuse. The dominoes were falling. Exactly as Tom had orchestrated. Detective Reyes called at 7 a.m. Tom, turn on the news. It's unprecedented. We've arrested 23 people so far. More coming. And we found Lynch at his lake house, chained up in that basement room. He's in the hospital now, claiming he was tortured, but he's also confessing to everything. All the victims, all the crimes. It's all on record. That's good news, Tom said neutrally. Tom, did you have anything to do with this? I don't know what you mean. I've been home with my daughter. Cassie was in Boston. But Reyes didn't need to know that. Several people we arrested mentioned you specifically. Said you were the one leaking information, making threats. Lynch says you kidnapped him. Lynch is a liar and a predator. If he's trying to blame his crimes on me, that's just another manipulation tactic. Reyes was quiet for a long moment. If I find evidence you were involved in anything illegal, then do your job and investigate. But right now, it sounds like you have enough actual criminals to worry about. After hanging up, Tom allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. It wasn't over. Investigations would continue for months, but the network was broken. Lynch would spend the rest of his life in prison. So would Birch and most of the Circle members. The girls would finally have justice. His phone rang again. Louise. Tom, it's all over the news. Did you? I made sure the evidence reached the right people. That's all. You did more than that. Cassie told me you were planning something. Tom, if they find out. They won't. I was careful. And even if they suspect, they can't prove anything. You could lose your medical license. Go to prison. I know. But it was worth it. Was it? For revenge. Not revenge. Protection. Those men were planning to kill Cassie, Louise. I heard them discuss it. They were going to eliminate the problem, her. I couldn't let that happen. Louise sighed. When are you bringing her home? Soon. Once I'm sure it's safe. Tom spent the next 2 weeks watching the news obsessively. More arrests. More revelations. The scope of the Circle's crimes shocked the nation. Support groups formed for victims. Hotlines were established. The exposure of the network gave courage to other victims who'd been silent. Dozens more came forward. Neville Lynch tried to make deals, offering testimony against other members. But the evidence was so comprehensive that prosecutors didn't need his cooperation. He was charged with 47 counts of rape, assault, child endangerment, and human trafficking. No bail this time. He'd await trial in prison, in protective custody because even guards couldn't guarantee his safety in general population. Alexander Birch also tried to cooperate, claiming he'd been manipulated by Lynch. But his own laptop proved otherwise. He'd been recruiting victims for 5 years, had personally profited from the operation. He received a 25-year sentence in a plea deal. Marjorie Lynch filed for divorce and released a statement claiming she'd had no knowledge of her husband's crimes. The Lynch Foundation dissolved. Their assets were seized to compensate victims. Tom watched it all unfold with grim satisfaction. The system had finally worked, but only after he'd forced it to. He'd supplied the evidence, created the pressure, made it impossible for anyone to ignore or bury the crimes. 2 weeks after the arrests began, Tom drove to Boston to retrieve Cassie. Louise met him at the door, her expression conflicted. She's doing better, Louise said quietly. She's been in therapy, eating regularly. The nightmares are less frequent. Can I see her? Cassie was in the guest room, packing her belongings. She looked up when Tom entered, and something in her eyes had changed. Still hurt, still healing, but stronger. Survivor, not victim. Dad, ready to come home? She nodded. I saw the news. They arrested all of them. They did. How did the police get all that evidence? Detective Reyes said it was an anonymous source. Tom met his daughter's gaze. She was smart. She understood more than he'd given her credit for. Sometimes good people have to do difficult things to protect the people they love. Cassie studied him for a long moment. You promised me he wouldn't hurt anyone ever again. You kept that promise. I did. She crossed the room and hugged him tightly. Thank you. They drove home in comfortable silence. The house looked the same, but everything felt different. Lighter somehow. The threat was gone. The monster was caged. That evening, Tom sat on the porch watching the sunset. His phone rang. Unknown number. Dr. Johnston? This is Kendra Parks. I just wanted to thank you. I don't know how you did it, but Bobby called me from prison. He saw the news. He's crying, Tom. For the first time in 3 years, he has hoped that Ashley might heal. That Lynch will actually pay for what he did. I'm glad I could help. You did more than help. You saved lives. All those girls he would have hurt if this had continued. You stopped him. However you did it, whatever you had to do, thank you. After Kendra hung up, Tom received 4 more calls. Parents of victims, thanking him, blessing him, crying with relief and gratitude. They didn't know what he'd done, didn't need to know, but they understood that somehow, justice had finally been served. Detective Reyes called last. Tom, I wanted to give you an update. Lynch's trial is set for 3 months from now, but with his confession and the evidence, it's a formality. He's going away for life. Multiple life sentences, actually. He'll die in prison. Good. There's one thing bothering me, though. Lynch keeps insisting someone tortured him the night before we found him. He has injuries consistent with his claims, nerve damage, psychological trauma, but no physical evidence of tools or weapons. It's almost like someone with medical knowledge. Reyes paused. If I didn't know better, I'd think a doctor did it. Tom's voice was calm. Sounds like Lynch is trying to manipulate the narrative. He's a predator, Tobias. They lie. They twist reality. You know that. I do. But Tom, if hypothetically someone did torture Lynch, someone who'd been pushed too far, who'd seen their daughter hurt, I'd understand that. I might even think that person was justified, in a cosmic sense. But I'd still have to investigate. I'd still have to arrest them if I found proof. Then it's fortunate there's no proof. Right? Fortunate. Reyes sighed. Tom, you're a good man. A good father. Don't throw that away. Whatever you did or didn't do, let it be over now. Go back to saving lives. Let the legal system handle the rest. That's exactly what I plan to do. After the call ended, Tom sat in the darkness, thinking about justice and revenge, about the line between them, about whether he'd crossed it. He'd broken laws, committed assault, kidnapping, torture. By any legal standard, he was a criminal. But he'd saved lives. Cassie's life. The lives of girls who would have been Lynch's future victims. He'd dismantled a network of predators that had operated with impunity for years. The system had failed. He'd succeeded where it couldn't. Was that justice? Or just a different kind of crime? Tom didn't have an answer. But as he watched his daughter through the window, Cassie reading on the couch, a small smile on her face, healing gradually, he knew he'd make the same choices again. Some cancers couldn't be cured with medicine alone. Sometimes, you needed a scalpel. 6 months passed. The trials concluded. Neville Lynch received 7 life sentences without possibility of parole. Alexander Birch received 25 years. 19 other Circle members received sentences ranging from 15 years to life. The network was completely dismantled. Cassie returned to school, though she'd transferred to a different district. She joined a support group for trauma survivors. Started writing poetry again, darker than before, but powerful, cathartic. She'd never be the same girl she'd been before Lynch. But she was stronger, resilient, determined not to let what happened define her. Tom continued working in the ER, saving lives, putting broken things back together. No one ever proved his involvement in Lynch's torture. The evidence was circumstantial, and ultimately, prosecutors decided pursuing it would undermine their case against Lynch. The predator's claims of victimhood would only generate sympathy. So Tom was never charged, never investigated formally. He returned to his life, carrying the secret of what he'd done. One evening, a year after the arrests, Tom received a package. No return address. Inside was a letter, handwritten. Dr. Johnston, I was one of Neville Lynch's victims. 4 years ago, before I met him, I was an honors student with a full scholarship to Stanford. After, I was a broken thing who couldn't sleep, couldn't trust, couldn't function. The legal system failed me. My family failed me. I lost everything. But you didn't fail. You did what no one else would do. You stopped him. And because you stopped him, other girls were saved. Girls who would have been me. I don't know exactly what you did. I can guess. And I want you to know that whatever it was, I'm grateful. You gave me something I thought I'd never have again. Hope that monsters can be stopped. Thank you. Ashley Parks. Tom folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer where he kept memories of Patricia. His wife had been a fierce protector, a woman who would have done anything for their daughter. She would have understood what he'd done, maybe even approved. That night, Tom and Cassie had their traditional Friday movie night. They chose a comedy, something light, something that made them laugh. Midway through, Cassie paused the film. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think things happen for a reason? Like, I know what happened to me was terrible, but because of it, all those other girls were saved. The whole network was exposed. Does that mean it happened for a reason? Tom considered his words carefully. I think terrible things happen randomly. But how we respond to them, that's where meaning comes from. You survived. You spoke up. That took incredible courage. And yes, because of that, others were saved. That doesn't make what happened to you okay. But it means you turned something evil into something purposeful. Cassie nodded slowly. I want to do something with this. Maybe become a therapist. Help other survivors. You'd be amazing at that. What about you? Do you have any regrets? Tom looked at his daughter, alive, healing, building a future. No, I don't. They finished the movie, ate popcorn, laughed together. Normal moments, precious because they'd been preserved. Outside, the world continued turning. Predators still existed. Injustice still thrived. But tonight, in this house, there was peace. Tom Johnston had been a surgeon, then an ER doctor, then a father pushed to the edge. He'd crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, had done things that would haunt him forever. But his daughter was safe. The monster was caged. And sometimes, in an imperfect world, that had to be enough. As Tom turned off the lights and headed upstairs, he passed a mirror in the hallway. He stopped, studying his reflection. Same face, same eyes. But something had changed. He'd become the kind of person who could torture another human being, who could plan and execute revenge with surgical precision. The question wasn't whether he regretted it. He didn't. The question was whether he could live with who he'd become. Tom smiled at his reflection, small, knowing, at peace. Yes, he could live with it. Because the alternative was a world where men like Neville Lynch operated with impunity, where victims had no protection, where the system's failure meant evil thrived. He'd chosen to be the thing that evil feared. A father's love transformed into calculated vengeance. A doctor's knowledge weaponized for justice. And if the world needed that, needed someone willing to cross lines to protect the innocent, then Tom would bear that burden. He climbed the stairs, checked on Cassie one final time. She was asleep, peaceful, safe, and went to his own room. Tomorrow he'd return to the ER, save lives, be the good doctor. But he'd also be ready. Ready if another predator emerged. Ready to do what was necessary. Ready to be the monster that hunted monsters. Because some threats couldn't be reasoned with or rehabilitated. They had to be eliminated. And Tom Johnston knew exactly how to do that. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.